Thank you so much for joining the event today. It is so exciting to see all the planning and prepping that we've done over the last few months come to life. And I'm excited to be here. You'll notice I'll probably be looking back and forth, and that's because I have two computers going on, one for my slides and one so that I can see you, see any comments or questions, and just be able to interact with you and who's here. So thank you so much for joining me today. I'm Amiee Keenan. And if you don't know me, I've been in the channel since 1999. And who would have thought that in June of this year, I would launch my own business called the ISV Society. And my marketing background has started with the ISV since 1999. I had some great companies I've been able to work with along the way. And it's funny, as you know, I've planned many events over the last year and a half, especially virtual ones, because as we know, COVID had made a little kink in marketing. And so, and I should say little, I should say huge kink in marketing. So we really had to come up with new and creative ways to do things. And so planning virtual events was one of the biggest. And all the events that I've planned, I've never actually presented. I've always done all the back end, or I just presented the hop-in tutorials or whatever it may be. So now I'm actually planning, prepping, and presenting. So totally different, but excited to be here and excited to have you be a part of my session today. So welcome, everyone. Let's just go over the agenda for today. I'm going to talk about some easy to apply strategies for you to be able to step up your marketing game right away. So very easy to apply, and you can start using them right now. We're also going to talk about the 3 C's. What is the ISV Society, and a little bit about me. And of course, there is a Q&A chat to the right. You'll see to the right, there's like tabs, chat, polls, people, Q&A. Chat is so that you can chat with others. And Q&A, just put your questions in there. I have Michelle on with me. She's going to help field those questions at the end of the webinar. We should have plenty of time for those. And then I do have a poll that I will launch later in this presentation. Okay, so the strategy, there's 3 components that I'd like to talk about today in regards to strategy. Your email strategy, your webinar strategy, and analyzing as a strategy. So we're going to dive into emails and how to get more opens and increase engagement in your email. For webinars, we're going to talk about what you can do for planning and prepping and how to invite and educate your audience so you can get those registrants and attendees numbers up. And then, of course, analyze. We have to look at those numbers of all of the marketing initiatives that we do throughout the year. We really have to dive deep into those numbers, and helps us with our strategy, helps us with our plan, helps us understand what campaigns are working and what's not. So you can do all the emails and webinars that you want throughout the year, but if you're not measuring, there is no point, right? You need to measure what you're doing for it to be effective. So email. First, we're going to talk about email. We all know that email is one of the #1 things most of us do, right? We email our customers, our prospects, our partners all the time. And we don't want to go to spam. It's a cost-effective way to help us, right? It's help us with our marketing efforts and our initiatives and our engagement, but we don't want to go to spam. We want to provide consistent content. We want to provide content that our partners, our customers, our prospects want to hear. And we want to make sure that they're not going to spam, that they're not going to disengage with your emails. And if you're sending out emails and no one is opening them, then you've wasted a ton of time and work, right? You want people to open them. You want those click rates to go up, which we'll dive into later. And you want them to be effective. So we're going to dive into each of these sections a little bit more with the subject lines. And there's a free tool called coschedule.com, which it is a free tool. So I can put a link in here later. But basically, it helps you with analyzing and coming up with good subject lines. And then content, and then adding visuals. So we'll dive into each of these 3 categories. I'll give you some examples, and hopefully you'll come away with some ideas for your next email campaign. Content, you always want to start with a question. You want to get your prospects, your customers, your partners thinking, and then adding visuals. I know so many visuals have become such a huge impact lately, especially now, especially since people, again, get so much email. You want to be able to stand out. You want to be able to create content and create engaging content. And visuals play a huge, huge role in that. Okay, so we're going to talk about subject line tips. And again, CoSchedule has this free app or online tool that you can use, and you just basically put in a subject line, your idea, and it rates it based on certain criteria, gives you back a number, and you want to get in the 70 or above range for your subject line. But a lot of us will start with the subject line when we start writing an email, but really what you should do first is really dive into the content of that email and create all of the content first, because there could be nuggets of information. There could be a sentence in that email that you could use as the subject line. So you'll save yourself a ton of work creating your subject line by creating your email first, and then using this important words or important phrase, something that really stands out in that email that you want to bring to the forefront, that you think would get your customers or prospects or partners to open the email, and then use that as a subject line. You also want it to be short and sweet. At 3 to 5 words is usually what we like to gauge towards. Sometimes it can be 4, 5, 6. It all depends on what your content is, right? So sometimes you can't do 3 words and get your point across or have it make sense. So you want to play around with that, but you don't want to have, 10 words, 11 words, 12 words. You don't want to have a really long sentence. You want to have short phrases. And then you also want to make them fun and engaging and something people want to open, and use numbers and emojis. I think it is so important for us to realize that we can use emojis and how effective they can be. So you can see some of the examples that I have here on the right side of the screen of emojis and how you can use them. And as you can see, it really makes them more eye-catching. It really makes someone want to stop and read it because there's something different. It's not just all words and text. So you really want to play with the numbers, play with emojis if they make sense, how you can make your subject line something that is something like stop the scroll, right? We all talk about stop the scroll when we're doing social media with those eye-catching pictures. Well, you want to stop the scroll in email with your subject line. And this is how you can do it. Okay. What a pain. So research, prospects are asked, you want to do the research when creating an email. When you're thinking about what you want your customers, your prospects or partners to learn, what are they asking? What are they searching on? What questions or pain points do they have? What problems do you solve? You want to do the research and finding all that information out. A lot of marketing, if you attend a lot of marketing sessions or events, they talk about buyers personas. And I think it's so important for you to have a buyer's persona, and you could have a whole session just on creating a buyer persona. But you want to make sure that you have a buyer persona in place, because this is how you're going to be able to answer these questions and figure out what your customers or prospects and partners want to hear, what they want to be educated on, what they want to learn from you. You want to be able to provide email content that's educational and informational, something that is they're going to walk away with learning something. They're going to walk away with, wow, I didn't know that. Thank you so much for sharing. And again, it gets those emails opens numbers so much higher. You don't want to product sell them to death, and you don't want to talk about features all the time. They do have a place, yes, but email is mostly want to be educational and informational and bring something to the table for somebody, for your customers and prospects and partners that they want to hear, that they need to hear. So you really want to take the time to figure that out. And this could be probably the most time-consuming part of the whole email process, is just figuring out who your buyer personas are, who you're targeting, what the messaging needs to be, what their pain points are, how you help them, and really hone in on that. And that's going to how you'll be able to create really engaging content in your emails. All right. Just looking at my screen, making sure everything's good. Okay. Visuals are viral. So I and it does come down to email platforms and automation platforms sometimes to be able to use visuals in your email, but not always. So images obviously are a great way to show something, to create more white space, to just give, again, that eye-catching email opening. And visuals should be strong, bold, informative, and animated GIFs are also making a huge role in emails. And I've been able to use animated GIFs in some of the email automation tools that I've had used in the past. And it's just amazing how they just bring your email to life. And you could do something as showing a quick tip maybe, or a comparison, or just something as just a moving part in an image just to make it come to life. It doesn't have to be anything extravagant. And there are a ton of tools out there to create animated GIFs. One of them is Canva. Not sure if I know a lot of people have heard of it, but then I talk to people and sometimes no one's heard of Canva. So I just want to throw that out there, that Canva is a great tool to create not only imagery. If you don't have if you don't have a graphic designer or access to a graphic designer and you want to create some great imagery, Canva is your best friend. It's like the graphic designer for dummies platform, and I just love it. And when I started my business this past month, that's how I create these slides, how I created all my imagery. And you can create animated GIFs so easily, animated social posts, animated anything. And animation, I think, is making its way to being one of the drivers of really boosting your content. So I highly, highly recommend that you try out either Canva, or if you have somebody or a resource or a tool or somebody that you have internally, great, that can help create animated GIFs, or someone that you work with outside agencies as well. But animated GIFs are huge, and I highly recommend you try them in your next email campaign. I can guarantee you, you will definitely get a bigger open rate just by including those. And then, of course, white space is so important. You don't want to fill your emails with so much content that it takes them forever to read. You want to have chunks of content broken up. You want some things italics, some things bold, just something that's easily to read, so that way they can skim through that email quickly and easily and get the information they need in a short amount of time. Because as we know, people are flooded with emails. And so we want to give them content that's quick, easy, digestible, and something that they can look at, and something that's inviting. And of course, you could use charts and graphs and comparisons and bring some kind of sneak peek into something or new feature or anything that you might be wanting to highlight or showcase, or whatever you're working on from an email campaign standpoint. Bring that to life with a chart or a graph if you can as well. I'm just checking to see if we have any questions yet, so hold on. Okay, Kristen, my question on email, since we're talking about email, I figure out we'll just stay here and answer your question now. So before we get into webinars, I send out a monthly newsletter. I feel like it has good content, but we are not having many people opening it. Is the subject line thoughts? Yes, it definitely could be the subject line, but you're saying you have a good open rate. And if maybe we take this offline, Kristen, and you can share with me your open rate and your click rate, and then how you've analyzed that over the last few months, and how you've analyzed the content over the last few months for your monthly newsletter. And certainly subject line probably could play a huge role in getting more opens. So I'd be happy to, if you want to email me certainly your examples that you have done in the past, and then I could easily help you with some subject line content. And of course, yes, download coschedule.com. They have two tools, one for your email subject lines and one for your blog post subject lines. And I use both of those. And they've just been, I feel like they've just given me so much help and insight to using powerful words, emotional words, things you would never think of, words you would never think of using, numbers, questions, and they give you ideas and tips on how to boost the titles. So I highly, highly recommend that you use that tool. Again, it is free. There is a paid version as well, but a free version works just fine. And you should be able to create better subject lines just from using that tool. So thank you for the question, and I'd be happy to help you in any way I can boosting your newsletter. So feel free to reach out to me. I will have my contact information at the end. So thank you for that question. Appreciate it. So getting those numbers up. So now we're going to move to webinars. So webinars are another thing that obviously have increased tremendously over the past year and a half. So not only are I emailing people to death, but we're webinaring them to death, right? So we really want to think about how we market our webinars in a way that makes it engaging, interactive, and inviting them to something that they want to learn. So we're going to talk about inviting, the comparison game, how to make it interactive, and what to do even after you've done a webinar. It's not over there. There's tons of things that you can do with that webinar to promote it as well. So for inviting, and I recently just figured this out or started doing this, so I highly recommend that you try this, but do you send an invite out to just everybody? 1, 2, how many emails do you send out, right? But instead of emailing the same people every time, why not email the people that didn't open your email? So that way you're not emailing the same people who've opened it and you're not emailing them and didn't open it. So you're not, emailing people to death that way. You're actually pulling out the list. So you've sent out this first email invite. You've got maybe, a few registrants, but you have time to send out another email. I highly recommend you send it out, but send it out to those that didn't open the first one. So it's like you're getting fresh eyes on it. And I've come to realize by doing that, you do get more registrants. Those numbers do go up just by segmenting out your lists based on that. Another huge element that's helped webinars in the past and webinars in general is doing a comparison. So whether your product, you can compare your solution to the ERP, whether it's GP, Acumatica, or CRM, how your solution is different from them, right? So they don't know what they don't know, right? They're using GP, they're using Acumatica, CRM, whatever system or platform they're using it like they always do. So they don't know that there's something, maybe they don't know there's something better out there to help them with some certain area or automate something or make something easier. So if you're showing them, hey, you're doing it this way right now, but hey, you could be doing it this way, and see how much time you save, see how easier it is, and really show them a comparison. And you can take it that much further with a comparison. In the email, you can actually do a chart. So you could say your solution, GP, a couple of bullet points, and then check marks, and make those check marks animated or something like that. So you can really create some great imagery and graphics around the comparison to be able to promote the webinar itself too. So it's twofold with that. When you're doing webinars and emails, you want to collaborate, you want to create content for both areas. And then I highly, highly recommend you are interactive. I know a lot of people don't like sharing their video, right? I have to take a shower, I have to, put makeup on or whatever, but I highly, highly recommend it because it just makes it so much more engaging, and people will want to listen because they see a face, right? We're so used to human connection, and with COVID and everything going on, human connection's kind of been taken away from us. And this is the only way we've been able to communicate. So you really want to get that human element as part of your webinars and make it as interactive as you can. Share your video, add polls, share additional content such as PDFs. So like GoToWebinar, you can add PDF content right to the bottom so that people can download it during the webinar. So maybe it's a case study or a white paper or pricing or whatever it may be. So you can provide just some little more information or some kind of tool that they can utilize and take away from the webinar as well. And then for webinars, when you're done with the webinar, you want to obviously send out a recording of the email to everyone that registered or attended. But why not write a blog about it as well? Pick out those nuggets of information. Again, maybe you have a chart, a graph, an animated GIF that you can include, because blogs you can put animated GIFs in blogs as well, which I highly recommend. But Anya's doing a whole session on blogs, so I'm going to leave that all to her. And then you want to be able to promote that recording as well through the blog, through the email, and through other outlets such as your newsletter. So I do have a webinar checklist that I put together, and it's basically starts with, you want to start your webinar at least 4 weeks out, meaning you want to start planning the content, putting together the content, how you're going to promote it through email, through social, where you're going to promote it. Take advantage of other like LinkedIn groups. Take advantage of, if you're part of the ERP software blog, they have an event page. And so take advantage of all those other outlets that you might be a part of. And you want to be able to have that whole plan planned out in 2 weeks. So that way you're starting to promote the webinar 2 weeks before the webinar actually launches. So I have a checklist that goes through all of these tips, or I should say all of these things that you should do to promote your webinar, and then as well post-webinar, what you can do to promote the webinar afterwards. So not only writing a blog and promoting a recording, but actually creating a workflow for those that actually registered or attended the event. So you can do a series of emails, 3 to 4 emails, just answering questions for them, trying to keep them engaged after the webinar. Yes, if there's customers or prospects or partners that asked questions, you certainly want to reach out to them on a one-on-one, but they're also going to get these emails as well. So you want to be able to not only send out the recording, but maybe your next email is a case study about the product. And maybe the email after that is, hey, why don't you get a free trial of this to see if it's going to work for your environment? And maybe the 4th email is support FAQs, or what would happen once you buy the product? What is the implementation time frame? What's the support look like? What are frequently asked questions? You want to be able to answer all the concerns they may have about moving forward with your solution ahead of time. So that way they have everything they need to make an informed decision on moving forward with your solution. So you really want to take your webinars from just not being a webinar to something way more, and to a sales funnel, so to speak, with this continuous engaging content. And then if they don't engage with you, those 3 to 4 emails, if they don't take action, then you just put them back into a nurture campaign and keep them on the list to move forward with that way. So I do have a poll, which I will launch now. If you would like a webinar checklist, you can just click on that poll tab to the right and click yes or not now, and I will email that to you. How are we doing on time? Doing good. All right. Do we have any other questions before I jump forward? Does your email tool allow you to sort by unopened and make a new list? Which tool? Thanks, Stephanie. So yes, I'm not sure how many tools actually do this, but I do know that HubSpot does. And I'm sure a lot of the tools now are starting to have more functionality where they're able to create these lists. So what happens is after you send out the first email, you're able to create another list of those that did not open the first email, and that's how you would send it out. So depending again on what email automation tool you use, you'll be able to create a list from there. So I'm not sure which ones do. I'm sure a lot of them are doing it more. I know a lot of them their functionality has increased tremendously, especially since COVID, to allow us to do more from a marketing standpoint. So maybe Constant Contact, MailChimp, things like that also do it as well. But this is just my personal experience with HubSpot. And HubSpot also does have free CRM and free email. I don't know how different it is from the paid version, but you can certainly start using HubSpot for free up to a certain amount of contacts. So if that's something not that I'm a HubSpot salesperson at all, but I do like it. And again, I'm not sure what other platforms are out there. It depends on what ERP you use. If you use CRM, then maybe you want to look at Influence, and you can chat with Natalie about their automation and what they do. And but yeah, so there are tools out there to help you. And then I know Candace put in here Acumatica pushes lunch and learns too. So thank you, Candace. So yeah. So there's so many automation tools out there. I suggest if you don't have an automation tool, highly recommend you do the research. But first figure out what your needs are. And if you don't know what your needs are, I can certainly reach out to me And if you want to figure out like what you need to do from a marketing standpoint, what you need to look for in an automation tool, I can certainly help with that. And maybe that's another blog that I write. So yeah, so bring the feedback, bring the questions coming, and this will help me create more content for you as well. But yeah, so a checklist, if you'd like it, just let me know and I'll be happy to send that over to you. Okay, so now we're going to dive into analytics. And honestly, over the past umpteen years, I wasn't very good at this until recently, and I just never realized how important analytics are. And I'm still learning over time on all of the interesting averages and what you need to look for and what your goal should be. And I always say start small and work your way up, especially if you're new at creating goals and email campaigns or marketing campaigns in general. Start with some small goals, that small little chunks of goals that you can work with along the year as you're analyzing. But what I do want to say is that every campaign, every marketing initiative that you do should have a goal. And if you were on the marketing and sales panel, management panel, they talked a lot about this. So having a goal, having a marketing budget even is so important. You don't want to overspend or underspend, right? And you want to be able to leverage all of the initiatives that you need to throughout the year in a certain budget. So when I say every campaign should have a goal, when you're looking at email campaigns, you want to look at your open and click rate and track those. And here's some averages based on campaignmonitor.com or benchmarks that you can utilize to see what the open rate is, the click-through rate, the click-to-open rate, and the unsubscribe rate. And this is where you want to kind of fall or gauge yours on. And even before this, you want to make sure you have a clean list, right? If you're marketing to everyone, if you're marketing to too many, list size doesn't matter if they're not engaged. And sometimes I think from a marketer's mentality, the numbers have to be high, high, high. Like we always think more and more and more. But if you have 10,000 contacts and none of them are engaged, or your open rate is far less than these averages, then it really is pointless. You want to be able to clean up your list as best as you can. So you want to remove hard bounces, soft bounces, those that are unengaged. So again, automation, this is where marketing automation tools really come in handy, because you can create lists based on that. So if you have, say, you've sent out, 5 or 6 emails, right, in a couple months time frame, you could actually create a list of those that didn't open any of those emails, and now take them out of your list, right, and put them in a separate list called unengaged contacts. And then you're sending to a list that actually is engaged with you, and then you will see those numbers skyrocket, because you're actually marketing to people that want to be marketed to, that people want to learn, that people want to know. And then you can do a whole separate campaign for those unengaged contacts to get them engaged, and do a series of emails as well. So before you even dive into those rates, you really just want to make sure your lists are clean and you're marketing to people that want to be marketed to, if that makes sense. So a little bit about the click-through rate and the click-to-open rate. I'm sure people might ask, what is the difference? So I wanted to look that up and give you an idea. So let me go to that page that I printed out. So the open rate, I want to dive into the definitions of these, just so you get a better understanding of where your emails will play. So the open rate measures the percentage of recipients that opened your email. Makes sense, right? Your click-through rate measures the percentage of recipients who clicked on the links in your email against the total number of subscribers who received the email. So the open rate is the percentage of people who opened your email in the first place. The click-through rate is the percentage of people who clicked on the link in your email. But the click-to-open rate also measures how many people clicked on a link. But it only takes into account people who got as far as to opening your email. So it doesn't include the entire list. It just includes the people that opened the list. So that's the difference between click-through rate and click-to-open rate, just so you know. So those are all the types of things that you can measure, and your marketing automation tool will actually provide a lot of these statistics in there. So you just want to make sure that you're tracking them and keeping an eye on them and noticing the trends every month as you're doing your email campaigns. And that way you can figure out what you need to tweak or change. So only time will tell. So you have to really, just because you did this campaign this month and it was a flop or it didn't do well or the numbers aren't there, doesn't mean it's not successful. You really have to take the time to measure it over time and keep track of your email stats, not only your email stats, but your webinar registrants and your blog views for that matter. So in regards to webinar registrants, maybe your goal is 20 to 30 registrants or 20 to 30 attendees. And then you're going to measure that over time. Maybe some webinars do really well and you get 50, and maybe others do 10 to 15, which is fine. Maybe it's just because the audience or the content or the time of day or whatever it may be. So you really, this is why you kind of have to measure over time to see what content is resonating with your audience, what they do want more of, and what content they want less of. And when you figure that out, you can create more of the content that they want, maybe trickle in less of the content that they don't want, because maybe it will come to the top and they'll want it at some point. Or maybe you just have to get rid of it altogether, depending on what the content is. So you really want to be able to track, and you don't have to do anything fancy, right? You can get an email spreadsheet. But a lot of the tools do provide reporting and analytics that you can dive into and look at, but then maybe put them on a spreadsheet to compare. So whatever is easiest for you. Webinar registrants, you get reports usually from whatever webinar tools you use, like GoToWebinar does provide reporting for the month, for the quarter, and you can certainly see where you're tracking for webinar registrants and attendees to see if you're matching your goals of 20 to 30 per webinar. And then, of course, blog views, which I know Anya dives a lot into, but it's so important when you're writing blogs to actually see who's viewing them and track that as well. So again, if there's a certain blog that got, a couple hundred views versus another blog that got 20 or 30, you might want to tweak that content, write more about the other one, or maybe change something in the first one. But I highly recommend, again, you tend to Anya's session for more on blogs, but you do, again, want to make sure that you're writing content that is relevant to your audience. And this, again, all ties back to your buyer's persona as well. So are you on track? Keep track of your monthly stats and trends, what's working, what is not. Some things will work, some things won't. Some things will do awesome and some won't. It really is a trial and error when it comes to marketing. And you just have to play with the things that you're doing, tweak things as you go along, and do more of the things that are successful. And I can't stress this enough, to actually block off time on your calendar and in your schedule every month to analyze and evaluate those reports and update the statistics, whether if you are using a spreadsheet, and keeping track of those numbers is so important, and it's so worth the time to make sure that the marketing initiatives you are doing is successful. So the 3 C's I want to talk about today is consistency, content, and collaborate. So consistency. The one thing ISV should focus on the most is consistency in your marketing. You don't want to send an email 1 month and then send an email 2 to 3, 4, 5 months later, right? You need to really be consistent with your content. Figure out, and this will come when you put together your content plan, when you put together your strategy. When you put together your numbers, because all those numbers and those goals are measured on marketing initiatives. So you have to figure out how many marketing initiatives you need to do to meet those goals, correct? So consistency is a huge thing. And if people don't hear from you on a consistent basis, they forget about you, right? So you really want to be top of mind when you're putting together your strategy. And again, you don't want to email them to death either. So there is a fine line on how many times you want to email people. And maybe you even just send out a survey, say, hey, how many times a month do you like to get emails from us? Or maybe you do break out your things. Maybe some people just get newsletters because that's what they like. Maybe other people just get, hey, I have a new blog post. I want to know when you always post your new blog post. So you could break out your audience into different buckets based on the marketing initiatives that you do. So you could send out a survey and really analyze your customers' data and what they like and don't like, what they like to receive, what they like to open, and really create lists and fine tune that. So you're really bringing them the content that they want when they want it. And of course, creating content that's engaging and educational, which I talked a lot about today, something you want to speak to your audience. You want to provide information and education, something that they're going to take away. And of course, collaborating with other ISVs and thought leaders and others in the channel, doing joint webinars, joint initiative, joint blogs, having guest blogs, guest speakers on your webinars. Really try to switch things up so they're not always hearing from you. And it helps you provide even more content to them that they wouldn't normally hear from you because you're bringing in outside influencers. So collaboration is key. And I should go back to questions. Can I talk about the risks of doing lists? Yes, Candace, I can. So back in the day, and believe it or not, when I first started as a channel marketer in the ISV space back in '99, we were actually faxing back then. Yes, faxing webinar invites, faxing letters, faxing promotions. How scary is that, right? Now that we're in such a digital age, I just can't, it just blows my mind to think of where I first started on my marketing journey. But lists are not, buying lists is a big no-no this day and age, because one of the reasons is GDPR, and I do have a whole blog about this on my website if you want to check it out. But sharing lists and purchasing lists, you're breaking a lot of the rules with GDPR, because they have never heard from you, and all of a sudden you're emailing them and they have no clue who you are, what you do. And maybe they do, because in this space a lot of people know everybody, but needless to say, they don't know how you got their contact information, right? So if you're buying a list or sharing a list, you really have to think about that aspect of it, because it's all about know, like, and trust factor. You want to ask your audience if they want to receive email content from you. And it's so huge. So that's why a lot of the virtual events that we do today, you can't say, hey, give me the whole list of those that attended the event, because you have to ask for permission. So what I've learned over doing the last few virtual events is that you need to cover your butts, right? You need to have some stipulation or checkbox saying, do you want to hear from the sponsors of this event? And they'll checkbox that yes or no. And then those that say yes, then yes, you can get their contact information because they agreed to it. But those that said no, no. Technically speaking, you should not get their contact information, and you should not be emailing them because they have said no. When you do any kind of landing page, you want to be able to have some kind of blurb about GDPR, not to say it has to say GDPR in it, but something that says you have given us consent to market to you because you've registered for this webinar. In your emails, you always want to obviously have an unsubscribe, so people can easily unsubscribe from the content that they're receiving from you. And then, of course, on your website, terms and conditions as well. So I highly suggest no one shares lists, because it's really not a best practice, and it really could hurt you in the long run with GDPR. And yes, GDPR is mostly in the UK, Canada, but our country is starting to adopt it as well. And it's just the best practice from a marketing standpoint that you want to follow, regardless if it's illegal or not, because people have sued in the past for people marketing to them or spamming them when they shouldn't be. So you really want to make sure you have a list that, again, you got on your own versus buying and or someone sharing a list from you. It's really a big no-no nowadays, whereas in the past when I first started out, everybody shared lists with everybody. And we did it all the time, because back then we didn't have to worry about the GDPR stuff. But now that we do, unfortunately, you can't really do that anymore. So you really, again, want to make sure that you're following those rules and best practices from a marketing standpoint, because if you're emailing people that never signed up for an email or signed up to get emails from you, you're going to totally turn them off, and then you've lost that opportunity. So thank you, Candace, for bringing that up. And sorry, I'm just want to read the chat or Q&A. To your point of separating content with images, some people choose not to download. Should we just continue to adding images, avoid, and use another tactic? I still think, I guess, it all depends. I still think you need at least one image in there. I feel like there has to be something eye-catching for them to want to open your email. So maybe if it's just whatever your email header is that's eye-catching, so whatever is like above the fold of your email that they're going to see right away, maybe it's a smaller image, and then you can get into bigger images or something different in the body of the email. So at least the first thing they see is something smaller and eye-catching, versus seeing just text, right? So you really again have to play with it, and that's where the measuring comes in, and evaluating and monitoring and figuring out what's working for your audience and what's not, and what people like and what people don't like. And maybe if there are people that don't like to get imageries, maybe there's an option for them to do that, of course. But I think in the scheme of things, images really do bring the email to life. And you can, again, play with it and, send out an email with no images, deep A/B testing, send out one with no images, send out one with an image, and see what does better as well. How are we doing on time? Oh my goodness. Okay, I got to wrap it up, don't I? Do I end at 3?
You do.
Okay, sorry guys. Well, I will breeze through what the ISV Society is, which is fine. So what is the ISV Society? So this is my new endeavor that I launched this month. And of all the years of my marketing experience, realized there is an easier way and affordable way to generate leads, and that's by collaborating and working together. So it's marketing made easy. It's a place to share best practices, and it's a society just for you. So that's really exciting. And what do you get? You get marketing content collaboration tool, lead generation, 4 webinars a year, and a place to share ideas and best practices. And this is just a quick snapshot of the fees. So it's $400 a month or $4,000 a year. And then here's my contact information. So feel free to reach out to me, email, my website, my LinkedIn, my Twitter, follow me, share with me, email me, get in touch with me. I love to chat about all things marketing. As you can tell, I was like telling Michelle, I was really worried my session wasn't going to be 45 minutes, but it ended up being way more than. So I'm excited. So I love to talk about all things marketing. I love to help ISVs with their marketing initiatives and, marketing for VARs as well. So, I know there might be some VARs on this session. And of course, a lot of these best practices and a lot of these tips and tricks you can also utilize and take advantage of as well. So I'm not leaving you guys out, but obviously my background is ISVs, and that's who I've helped over the last, since 1999, not to outdate myself. And so excited to just be able to dive in and help people with their marketing efforts and just getting leads and collaborating, doing joint marketing initiatives, doing joint webinars, and helping you be able to do that in an easy way. So thank you so much for joining me today, and you are now allowed to leave and go and attend the panels that are coming up next. So thank you so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your event, and don't forget to join Influence at the happy hour after as well. Thanks, everyone.